So this week in the Sacred Gathering, we will be doing a table discussion. So again, for this recording, rather than me saying as much, I'll largely just be reading the questions, reading the quotes, let people think about it on their own, because I think the really good stuff is what we'll be talking about around the table in kind of our small group. So this week we're going to look just some thoughts around reconciliation and change, and the good life and God's place in all of those. So our intro questions, thinking through all of this, is going to be: can you think of a time you had a complete 180 change in your attitude or your opinion? What caused this change, and was there a person involved? Do you have any opinions or views that aren't generally accepted or set you apart? Why do you hold on to these beliefs, views, despite disagreement from others? So yeah, hopefully doesn't pick any fights there right from the get go, right? So our first quote comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 5, 16 through 21. So then from this point on, we won't recognize people by human standards. Even though we used to know Christ by human standards, this isn't how we know him now. So then, if anyone is in Christ, that person is part of a new creation. The old things have gone away, and look, new things have arrived. All of these new things are from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and who gave us the ministry of reconciliation. In other words, God was reconciling the world to himself through Christ by not counting people's sins against them. He has trusted us with this message of reconciliation. And so we are ambassadors who represent Christ. God is negotiating with you through us. We beg you, as Christ's representatives, be reconciled to God. God caused the one who didn't know sin to be sin for our sake, so that through him we could become the righteousness of God. And then the second quote comes from Mending the Divides by Huckins and Swigert. The restoration of all things was in God's view from the very beginning. God is the great peacemaker who established the priority of peace and the practice of peacemaking throughout history. God in Jesus embodied the peacemaking practices of seeing, immersing, and contending in order to restore shalom. In the life and death of Jesus, God waged the decisive peace promised to Abraham. The resurrection confirmed that all things were reconciled to God. Peacemaking is a mission of God and a vocation of God's people. While it's hard work, peacemaking is neither a strategy to employ nor an obligation to uphold. It is a life fueled by our identity as reconciled beloved of God. And so here's the questions on those quotes. Has this experience of being a new creation been a single event or an ongoing process for you? What have been some of the major changes you have seen under Christ's influence? Why must our work of reconciling with others flow from our reconciliation with God? Are there people you fundamentally disagree with or simply cannot understand their perspective? How do these people fit into this discussion? What does this look like in our hyperpolarized culture? What does the work of reconciliation look like for you personally? Whom do you know that might be in need of reconciliation? And a final quote from Wolf and Crossamans for the Life of the World. The love of the triune God is on the journey of redemption through history is a love that often has to suffer. As it is in God's life and Christ's life, so it is analogously in the lives of those called and empowered by the Spirit to be Christ to the world and to participate in Christ's mission, except that they too are part of the world that has not yet fully become God's home. A tension marks the life they live in this world, a struggle, internal and private, as well as social, even structural and public, for the true life in the midst of a false one. Christ came to call all people to flourishing life. Guided by God's kind of love and empowered by God's Spirit, all of us are called to flourish fully in the world become God's home, and partially on the journey there, rejoicing even while having to mourn, accepting lack willingly, so that the needs of others can be satisfied, leading lives of courage and integrity as we struggle against the evils of this age, trusting and loving God, participating in God's mission in the world, and in all this growing into our own human fullness. And so, what is the role of God's kingdom or the flourishing life in this discussion of reconciliation, of acknowledging our differences, and the work God has invited us into? So, again, I'm looking forward to table discussion and hearing everyone's thoughts on this on Sunday.